Brad Stevens just revealed the plans for the Boston Celtics roster moving forward, and it is not what fans expected. The Boston Celtics, projected to have this roster full with all 15 guys after this trade deadline, will be just a little bit more patient, as Brad Stevens reveals before the game yesterday that the Celtics will be staying patient ahead of filling out their roster. We'll be diving in, looking at certain possibilities, possibly extending Neemias Queta, or looking at the buyout market at possible guys that the Boston Celtics could obtain to finish out this roster eventually. All of that and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Veliz. But before we dive in on this basketball news discussing the Celtics, 79% of you guys are not subscribed. And we'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, join the Celtics Digest family, and help us get to our goal of 4,000 subscribers. We know thousands of you guys tune into these videos every single day, so we want to make sure you stay up to date on the latest Boston Celtics news. Hit that subscribe button, as you definitely will not regret it. But let's dive into this episode, as it is going to be a jam-packed one, as we look at the topic of what are the Celtics doing with their last roster spot. And like I mentioned in the intro, ahead of the game yesterday in the afternoon versus the Miami Heat, Brad Stevens and Chris Forsberg had a little bit of back-to-back talking, and they discussed what the Celtics were planning to do ahead of this 15th roster spot after the trade deadline. And we have a report from Noah Dalzell here saying that the Celtics likely won't make a final decision on the 15th roster spot anytime soon. Brad Stevens says we need to utilize this time to evaluate and, knock on wood, if we deal with any injuries or anything like that. We just have to be a little bit patient. And I agree with Brad Stevens on this. If you want to watch this video clip, you can go to Noah Dalzell's Twitter and check it out. But if you want to watch the video clip, he also went into a little bit more depth, talking about how the Boston Celtics actually do have some versatility at the depth spot now. By trading Banton out and trading Lamar Stevens out, bringing in Springer and Tillman, I do think it brings the Boston Celtics a little bit more depth, and it helps them out in their playing ability. I think Springer and Tillman fit in a little bit more for the Celtics. They have that upside, and with the front court now bringing in Tillman as well, the Boston Celtics do look to be set in that position. The wing position, they obviously have Hauser, Brown, Tatum, Springer, if you want to count him as a mix of a combo wing guard. And then for the guards as well, you have a combination of Springer, Payton, Pritchard, Jrue Holiday, and Derrick White. So I think the Celtics are very well-rounded at this day and age. But like we mentioned, there is still one roster spot open. It's been open since the start of the season. Many Celtics fans, including myself, thought they would fill out this roster spot after or before the trade deadline ended, possibly in the buyout market, trading for another guy. But they did do some trades. Brad Stevens was on the phone ready to go, flipping Stevens and Banton. He did get that done, but we still do have that last open roster spot. Now, there are some possibilities that the Celtics could go to, and we're going to be exploring one of them right now, and that's the possibility of signing Neemias Queta and bringing him in as this 15th overall roster spot. Now, I know as a fan of the Boston Celtics, and plenty of you guys fans of the Celtics, would love to see Neemias Queta being that 15th roster spot guy. A lot of fans are very high on him. They really like his energy. They really like his upside. And if we want to look at Neemias Queta's stats, you guys can see 4.8 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 0.5 assists on 61% basically shooting from the field and 75% from free throw in 22 games as well. We all know that Neemias Queta had that big West Coast road trip, putting up 2 double-doubles in both of those games, and ever since, he really hasn't been able to find his footing. Has played with the Boston Celtics in some instances with some depth issues, but as we know, Neemias Queta is the last kind of big on the roster and the rotation, as he is a two-way guy. And that is the kind of difficult problem that Brad Stevens has ahead of him. As you know, do you want to keep Neemias Queta on this two-way deal and have him ready to go at that availability? Or do you want to convert him right away, have him for the playoffs, just in case you do get that flexibility? Obviously, that's why he's talking about those injuries, you know what I mean? If we do see a guy go down in the next couple of days or couple of weeks, I'm sure that the Celtics will address this roster spot more heavily. But at this point, they want to be careful and patient, kind of see what they need to improve on at the best. And as we get closer and closer to the All-Star break, we do have to worry about something, because the Celtics are running out of time for Neemias Queta's two-way contract. Not because he's nearing his 50-game limit, because the deadline to convert his contract is March 3rd. He's been great for the Celtics, as Brad Stevens has said at the media scrum. And this is from the Celtics Files, who gave some praise to Neemias Queta as well. Diving into this article, we can see that the Celtics, like I mentioned, have used Queta in 22 games this season, but they've had him on the bench with Boston for 38 games in total, which is getting close to his 50-game limit for his two-way contract for his rules. It's also worth mentioning that the deadline to convert the two-way players is March 3rd, like the tweet just said. So with the All-Star break this month, the Celtics only have 10 games in February. So Queta won't hit his limit during this month, but coincidentally enough, he'll hit it by the deadline date at the start of March. So Queta, by the time that March 3rd does roll around, will hit his 50-game limit, as after the 10 games in February, he will be around 48. That is a big question mark for the Boston Celtics to analyze, and I do think that they will wait for this March 3rd deadline to make their assessment for the final roster. Now, like I said, the Celtics do want to keep Neemias Queta. It is to add to their front court depth, as now they would have guys in Al Horford, Luke Kornet, Kristaps Porzingis, Xavier Tillman, and Neemias Queta. They would have 5 bigs that they could run at the 4 or 5 position, and if Kristaps Porzingis were to go down or Al Horford were to need more rest later on in the season, the Celtics could accommodate for that by playing, Neemias Queta, Luke Kornet, Xavier Tillman in some of these garbage games at the end of the season in April. But obviously, if the Celtics still want to go after that wing kind of position, they already have Brissett as well, who I forgot to mention, with Hauser, Tatum, Brown, possibly Springer. But if they want to go after a wing, an underappreciated wing still available in that free agent market in 2 weeks once it hits around March 3rd, the Celtics could go after that. Or if they feel like they need some more guard play, a little bit more playmaking, that is also the possibility as well. Now, honestly, if the Celtics do feel like they need some front court depth, I do expect him to bring a guy in Neemias Queta. I don't see them going after any of the buyout available guys for front court depth, as Brad Stevens has said on if Neemias Queta would be making the 15-man roster in Boston after acquiring Xavier Tillman, saying we have to continue to evaluate everything for that last roster spot. So honestly, by making this Tillman move, I kind of think that Brad Stevens has already set in mind that he does like Queta and he wants to keep him, but possibly on this two-way deal. And I think that's the best move for the Boston Celtics as well. I think Queta developing in that G League for the second half of the season after the All-Star break and fully buying into being a total two-way player, I think he'll really, really fight and be developing on his finishing at the rim and rim protection. Those are the 2 things that they tell him to harp on and focus for in the offseason as well. I think when Neemias Queta comes back in the offseason next year, he is definitely a third big for the Boston Celtics, but possibly even the backup big, depending on how Xavier Tillman plays this season if the Celtics go to extend him, how Al Horford looks after another year playing in the Boston Celtics uniform, and if the Celtics bring back Luke Kornet as well, if Neemias Queta were to kind of take over him. Now, Neemias Queta could also get this 15th roster spot, and it would still be exciting for the Boston Celtics, but there are also other possible ways that the Celtics could address this last roster spot, and that is going at the wing position or possibly the guard position. And if we want to look at some possible free agents the Celtics could go after that have hit the buyout market as of today, these guys have all gotten bought out by their original teams, they've gotten waived, and now they are available as free agents. James Bouknight, Danilo Gallinari, Corey Joseph, Kevin Knox, Furkan Korkmaz, Robin Lopez, Shemez Metu, Frank Ntilikina, Ish Smith, and Thaddeus Young. Now, the 2 guys on this list that the Celtics cannot acquire are Jordan Goodwin and Thaddeus Young. The reason they cannot acquire Thaddeus Young is because his contract is over the non-tax mid-level exception, which makes the Celtics of $12.4 million, which, when the Celtics being in the second apron, cannot acquire a contract over that money on the buyout market. They can also not acquire Jordan Goodwin, as he was also claimed by waivers this afternoon by the Memphis Grizzlies after this screenshot from Keith Smith was already taken. I did not want to obviously find another screenshot with all these other guys and couldn't, so I just used the same one. But honestly, the Celtics could bring in a guy in Bouknight, Gallinari, Corey Joseph, Kevin Knox, Furkan Korkmaz, Robin Lopez, Shemez Metu, Frank Ntilikina, Ish Smith. Any of those guys are available for the Celtics to bring in with other possible buyout guys. We've obviously seen guys like Bismack Biyombo and guys like Kyle Lowry sign in recent days, so those guys are obviously off the table. But if the Celtics were to look at a possible another guard or wing, I could see them maybe looking at a Furkan Korkmaz to bring some shooting, but I know he's kind of similar to Sam Hauser. Maybe possibly a Corey Joseph for some playmaking, or maybe even James Bouknight for some shooting, but I do think the Celtics would not want to buy into him. Personally, I think the best bet is Danilo Gallinari, bringing him back if he wants to come back to the Boston Celtics, as since you've already moved off of him on a deal from being traded to Washington, and then from Washington to Detroit where he's gotten bought out. He can eventually come back for the Boston Celtics. Like I mentioned, Frank Ntilikina or Ish Smith could be a good point guard. Ish Smith being on the Nuggets last season could be a great playmaker for the Celtics. I wouldn't really look at Frank Ntilikina. And then obviously guys like Robin Lopez and Shemesh Metu, those bigs, I think the Celtics would feel confident already signing Neemias Queta because they already have him on the two-way deal, then going after a guy like one of those guys. So let me know in the comment section down below who you guys think the Celtics should go after with this 15th roster spot, if you know they're being patient and wait till March 3rd. Should they be patient and wait to sign Neemias Queta for this 15th roster spot, or should they look to go after a guy that gets possibly bought out like Danilo Gallinari, Corey Joseph, Ish Smith? Let me know who you guys think in the comment section down below. And thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Velez, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.